Okay, we'll start with this. A follow-up to a story I talked about in my previous video. What's next for Juan Francisco Estrada? Because the story up until recently was that we were close to a Juan Francisco Estrada versus Bam Rodriguez fight, where now we're hearing that Juan is going to have a tune-up fight in the spring and then maybe a unification match in the summer with Kazuto Ioka.
What?
What does all this mean?
What?
One thing you have to remember is that Gallo Estrada hasn't fought since late 2022. He sat out all of last year, so it would be less than ideal to go straight into a fight with a young gunner like Bam Rodriguez under those circumstances. Boxing scribe Jake Donovan so adequately put it, Bam versus Estrada was never going to be next. Matchroom has a different first fight in mind for Bam's return to super flyweight.
We'll get to that.
It seems that any way you slice it, whether you're thinking about an Ioka unification match or a Bam Rodriguez showdown, neither of those fights were going to be Gallo Estrada's next fight. He's planning on having a tune-up fight in the spring, and then we'll see where he goes from there.
Then what was Robert Garcia talking about? That they're just waiting on Gallo?
Well, they probably are, but that never meant that the fight was made. That never meant that the fight was signed, sealed, and delivered and en route, and why would it be when Gallo hasn't fought since December of 2022? We're in 2024.
Right.
Thus, when it comes to Gallo, it's unclear who he's going to fight after this upcoming tune-up fight in the spring. It could be Kazuto Ioka. It could be Bam Rodriguez later on in the year.
Let's not put the cart before the horse.
Okay then, well, where does that leave Bam Rodriguez? I don't think he's going to sit around most of the year waiting for Gallo to settle his own affairs. What is he going to do? Who is he going to fight? When Jake Donovan says that Matchroom has someone else in mind for Bam's return to super flyweight, who could they be talking about?
Who are they looking at?
Could be talking about the winner of the upcoming Kosei Tanaka versus Bakasega fight for the newly vacated WBO title at super flyweight. Whoever wins that fight, maybe Matchroom goes after them.
Whether Kosei wins or Christian wins, whoever becomes WBO champion, maybe Matchroom makes them an offer to see about doing a fight with Bam. To my knowledge, neither Kosei or Christian have any major promotional outfits behind them in America.
To my knowledge, neither fighter is with Top Rank, neither fighter is with Golden Boy or the PBC, so there are no promotional politics to have to worry about.
So maybe they go after them.
Or maybe they go after Fernando Martinez, reigning IBF champion of Argentina.
Isn't he a PBC guy?
Yeah, but so was Subriel Matias up until recently. So was Ray Vargas up until recently. Ray's next fight is going to be in Saudi on the undercard of Joshua versus Ngannou, and Subriel, he just went to Matchroom.
Things change.
What's the PBC got this guy so busy with? He can't go to Matchroom, that he can't box Bam.
The other two champions at this weight are preoccupied. Gallo's gonna fight in a tune-up fight, then maybe he fights Ioka. At the same time, Ioka has a mandatory challenger he has to satisfy. He has to sort out that situation.
While those two guys are settling their affairs, these are two options that Bam has to become a champion at super flyweight again. He can go after the WBO title, or he can go after the IBF title.
To my knowledge, Fernando Martinez is not otherwise preoccupied with anything, and given that the PBC has a lot less resources and a lot less fight dates this year,
Fernando's team might be receptive. Even if his last 2 to 3 fights have been on the PBC side of things, that's when Showtime was still in the picture. They're not in the picture anymore, and they only have one fight on schedule. If you're Fernando, you want to make money, don't you?
go fight Bam.
It's a good fight. Fernando Martinez is best described as an offensively minded fighter. He's no stickler for the sweet science. He's no finesse fighter. He's an artillery guy.
Him and Bam would be a great fight.
What would be a very different fight with a different kind of fighter than the last fighter that Bam Rodriguez fought. Last time he fought, it was against Sonny Edwards, who really isn't an artillery fighter. He's a finesse fighter. He's a pure boxer, whereas Fernando Martinez, he is an artillery fighter. He's a mid-range to inside fighter, a volume puncher.
Aggressive.
So is Kosei Tanaka. Kosei Tanaka, who's already a 3-division champion, now he's shooting for 4. If he makes it through his next fight, him and Bam make for a real dust-up, a real Donnybrook. I could go for either fight.
These are the guys I think Matchroom has in mind.
So we'll see what the not-so-distant future holds for Bam Rodriguez.
Ciscayo is all tied up.
Men's bantamweight news, Naoya Inoue has shot down talk of him ever moving up to fight Gervonta Davis, saying, "I always want to show the best Naoya Inoue. I wouldn't fight at super featherweight just because the money's good. There are many fighters who have chased the money, but ended up not being able to perform well and quit. The reason I box is not for the money. There are weight divisions in boxing for a reason."
Let's get it straight.
Naoya Inoue doesn't have to go up to 135 in pursuit of money because he's already making money right there where he is, at super bantamweight. He's quite literally the cash cow of those divisions, those lower weight classes, where it's a thing unheard of for a bantamweight or a super bantamweight to make in excess of $3, $4, $5, $6 million.
Right.
He's a star where he's from.
Sure, you could ask him to go to 135 to fight the likes of a Gervonta Davis, which is a name up there, it is, but that'd be like asking Gervonta to go up to 147 to fight Terrence Crawford.
And I'm sure that Gervonta's fans wouldn't like that idea, that Gervonta move up from 135 all the way up to 147.
Oh, you don't like that?
Naoya Inoue is already a champion at 4 weights, has been a champion at 4 weights, undisputed in 2, something Gervonta Davis has never done. At the very best, Gervonta is a 2-division champion. He was a champion at 130, and he's a champion now at 135 as a result of being elevated to that position after Devin Haney vacated his title. He didn't actually beat a champion in order to be a champion like Naoya Inoue did.
He's never been Ring Magazine champion, he's never been lineal, he's never been undisputed, he's never even been unified.
So why should the guy who's already accomplished so much, more than the other guy, in terms of legacy and accolades and history-making endeavors, why should a guy who's already accomplished so much have to accomplish that much more? I mean, why would the burden be on the smaller fighter, the much, much smaller fighter, as there are several weight classes between 122
and 135.
There's 126.
Yep.
There's 130.
Yep.
And then there's 135. And you're asking a guy who's already a 4-weight champion to go up, what, 2, 3, or 4 more weights?
Gervonta is?
No, Gervonta isn't. Gervonta Davis himself actually blew off that idea, that they're nowhere near the same weight. They're not going to fight. See, both Gervonta and Inoue have blown off the idea that they might fight, but it's Gervonta Davis's fans that are keeping that idea out there, making that recommendation, angry that Stephen Fulton wasn't able to do the job, and the next nearest American fighter
Is Gervonta.
They can't think of an American fighter at super bantamweight to beat Inoue because there isn't one. They can't think of a featherweight that can do it either because there isn't one. They're tribalism.
You're saying they're so mad that Stephen Fulton got beat. What they want Inoue to do now is to move up to 135.
Some do because they're that insecure. It's hard to maintain the superiority complex they have over foreigners and foreign fighters in the sport of boxing when an American gets beat, when an American gets trounced like Stephen Fulton got trounced.
It hit him right in the feels.
So as stupid a recommendation as that might sound, they're holding out hope that Inoue might go all the way up to 135 so that Gervonta Davis can beat him. But even Gervonta thinks that's a stupid fucking idea.
Inoue's not going up to 135.
So as it pertains to 135,
Lightweight.
men's lightweight news, Bob Arum was asked if Gervonta Davis versus Shakur Stevenson can happen, to which he replied,
Shakur wants to do that fight. Davis has to want to do the fight. He came off a big payday versus Ryan Garcia, and even though it's a much more difficult fight, Shakur doesn't give him the same payday.
Now, how many times in how many videos have I told you that? With Ryan, it was the most rewards for the least risks. But with Shakur, it's the opposite. It's big risks and low rewards. You won't get the same money fighting him that you got fighting Ryan. So I sincerely doubt that's a fight the Gervonta Davis people want. In fact, I know it's a fight they don't want because Calvin Ford blew off that idea, which we already talked about. What I want you to notice...
Do you notice how differently Gervonta Davis is treated from, say, Canelo Alvarez?
Give you an example. Whenever you attach a fighter's name to the name of Gervonta Davis, what Gervonta's supporters immediately start doing is giving you reasons why the fight shouldn't happen. In the case of a Shakur Stevenson, what they'll say is, he's not a draw. He's not worth any money.
Right?
But what money were the Charlo brothers worth when you were demanding that Canelo Alvarez fight them? What money was Demetrius Andrade worth when you guys came to the conclusion that Canelo should fight him?
Saying he was ducking.
Do you see what I'm getting at? that with Gervonta, the excuse is, oh, well, the guy's not a big draw, so Gervonta doesn't have to fight him. Why should he?
But when the fuck were the Charlo brothers big draws? When the fuck was Demetrius Andrade in the entirety of his career? When was he ever a big draw? Many of Canelo Alvarez's biggest critics just so happen to be big Gervonta Davis fans, but you see how differently they treat situations.
Think about David Benavidez. Think about David Morrell. These are two guys they like to use to criticize Canelo Alvarez, but neither one of those two guys is a big draw. Neither one of them is a big box office draw, a big ticket seller, neither one of them. But that doesn't stop these guys from demanding that Canelo Alvarez fight them, whereas in the case of Gervonta, they use a different standard. Even though Gervonta's not actually a bigger draw than Canelo, they'll say that because of Gervonta's drawing power, he's earned the right to choose, but Canelo Alvarez hasn't. He's a bigger draw than Gervonta. He's literally the top earner in the entire sport. It's between him and Anthony Joshua. They're number 1 and number 2. Gervonta, I think he's down there at number 3.
No, he's number 4. He comes in behind Jake Paul.
They're not going to put any pressure on Gervonta Davis to fight any of his contemporaries. With Devin Haney, the excuse is that he's too big. He's up there at 140. The excuse with Shakur is he doesn't draw enough. He doesn't sell enough.
Well, what the fuck did Isaac Cruz sell when you fought him?
What the fuck did Mario Barrios sell when you fought him? What the fuck did Rolly Romero sell when you fought him? You say that he's the A-side. You love to say that he's the A-side to everybody at or around this weight. You'll go as far as saying that he's the face of boxing. But if he's the face of boxing, the responsibility to fight these people and do these fights is on him.
It's just like Bob Arum said. Shakur wants to do that fight, but Gervonta has to want to do that fight. And I don't think he does.
I don't think it's a coincidence that it's taking Gervonta a while to pick his next opponent. I don't think it's a coincidence because there ain't no more Ryan Garcias out there, you know. You're not going to get out there with everybody and make that kind of money.
Not just anybody.
There was this hullabaloo about him being in talks to fight Conor Benn, but rumor has it he rejected that offer. He's not going to fight him. That's what the rumor mill is spinning. So you're not fighting Conor, you're not fighting Devin, you're not fighting Teofimo, no interest in Shakur.
You can't be fighting Rolly or Isaac again because they're about to fight each other.
And this is the guy you're going crazy about? This is the guy you're dying on a hill over.
You're fucking stupid.
Enough about that guy. Let's talk about some lightweights that actually are fighting each other.
Vasyl Lomachenko says my goal is to be a world champion again. Afterwards, I can start thinking about undisputed.
I hardly think after the Salido fight, the Lopez loss, and the Haney loss, that he thinks of undisputed with the same vim and vigor that he once did. He's an older man now. He's in his mid-30s with a younger man's style.
I always used to say, enjoy him while he lasts.
Discernment from Lomachenko's point of view is needed. He knows that he can't take his eyes off the prize and focus elsewhere. With his focus remaining on Kambosos, he believes that he should be able to outclass his man. If he does, he's still convinced that when it comes to becoming an undisputed champion, he's idoneous to the task.
I think adept to the task would have been a better word.
Right now, my goal is to be world champion again, said Lomachenko during a recent presser. Afterwards, I can start thinking about undisputed again. And if he starts thinking about undisputed again, well, that would put Gervonta Davis back in his crosshairs. He's WBA champion at this weight. That would put the winner of Navarette versus Baranchyk in his crosshairs, and Shakur Stevenson.
Now, let's not waste each other's time. Gervonta Davis ain't gonna fight him.
He didn't fight him years ago when they were both at 130. He didn't fight him the whole time he's been at 135, and I don't think he's about to fight him now.
Even now, after 3 losses, when the guy's in his mid-30s, you don't think Gervonta would fight him?
Well, perhaps now he'd be a bit more receptive to the fight than he was years ago, because now Vasyl Lomachenko's in his mid-30s, and Father Time, he does catch up to everyone, though ultimately, politics would still get in the way of that fight.
Because I don't think Gervonta's going to go to ESPN and Top Rank for it, and I don't think ESPN and Top Rank are going to send Vasyl Lomachenko to Amazon.
Look, enough about Gervonta Davis. We've spent enough time talking about Gervonta Davis. Let's focus on the fights that are feasible, the fights that can actually happen. Now, most people are expecting today's version of Vasyl Lomachenko to still have enough in the tank to beat a George Kambosos. We saw how George looked with Maxie Hughes. We saw that he should have lost, but he got lucky.
Maxie Hughes is a southpaw like Vasyl Lomachenko is a southpaw. Maxie Hughes can move around a bit like Vasyl Lomachenko can move around a bit, but Maxie Hughes is no Vasyl Lomachenko.
What gave it away? What they were planning? That they put George in there with a southpaw who's fleet of foot, and that even though George should have lost, George won. What gave it away? That they were going to put George in there with Vasyl Lomachenko.
I think Loma's going to beat him, even if I don't think he's as inspired as he used to be, or as fast, or quite as nimble, quite as strong as he used to be. I still think he beats George.
It's what happens after that where things get interesting, because he's going to have a tough decision to make. It's either you unify with Shakur Stevenson, the WBC champion, or unify with the winner of Navarette versus Berinchyk, which I think might be Inoue Navarette.
He may have to choose between Stevenson or El Vaquero.
I'm curious as to what decision he's going to make, because he didn't have much luck with a pure boxer in Devin Haney. A lot of people feel like he got jobbed on the cards, and he may have that in mind when it's time to make a decision. Does he want to box another American, another pure boxer, so that he can get jobbed on the cards again, or does he try his luck with a pressure fighter, a volume puncher like himself, in Inoue Navarette?
Those are not easy fights for him. He's in his mid-30s.
They're very different fighters, Shakur Stevenson and Inoue Navarette, though oddly enough, they're both southpaws. Shakur's a southpaw, so's El Vaquero, so's Vasyl Lomachenko.
Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey.
They're very different fighters, and Shakur Stevenson, what you're facing is a moving target, an outside fighter, a pure boxer, whereas with El Vaquero, you don't really have to find him, he'll find you, but that's not necessarily a good thing.
He's not as fundamentally sound as Shakur Stevenson, but he is a harder puncher, and he's busier within a round. So what do you think favors?
Whose style do you think it would be easier for Vasyl Lomachenko to beat? Shakur's or El Vaquero's? And as a consumer, as a customer, what fight would you prefer to see? Lomachenko versus Stevenson or Lomachenko versus Navarette?
El Vaquero.
It's been a long time since Vasyl Lomachenko was in there with a volume puncher and a rough and tumble fighter. The last time was the Orlando Salido fight.
Guy who's gonna get in your face, guy who's gonna rough you up, throw punches and bunches, try to push you around, guy like that. That was the last time.
I'm not even gonna lie to you. That's a very exciting fight, and perhaps an easier fight to sell right now, because Shakur Stevenson's last performance, it didn't help him none too much. It didn't help his marquee value.
Said they're gonna get him back out there in June. We'll see against who.
But I'm left wondering, who will Vasyl Lomachenko go with if he does become a 3-time lightweight champion? Beyond the George Kambosos fight, pick your poison. Who do you prefer?
Shakur?
Or Inoue Navarette? And do you guys like his chances against either of these fighters?